Welcome everyone to Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and this video gives an in-depth look at Brigadier General William Barksdale's charge at the Battle of Gettysburg. It was one of the most amazing military feats of the war, but gets overshadowed by Pickett's charge in popularity. On July 2nd, Longstreet's divisions under McLaws and Hood attacked the Union left flank at the Peach Orchard, the Wheat Field, Devil's Den, and Little Round Top. Under McLaws was William Barksdale, a lawyer in Mississippi and prominent U.S. congressman from that state. He was an ardent secessionist, and once the Civil War broke out, immediately enlisted in the Confederate Army. Through his tenure as commander of a brigade, he took part in some of the most destructive battles of the Civil War in the Eastern Theater. He became known as a dependable commander and hard fighter. At Gettysburg, he would be tasked with pushing the Federals out of the Peach Orchard. The following animation will not be to size, but an accurate representation of the approximate position of the armies. Brigadier General Charles Graham's 6 regiments along the Emmitsburg Road faced west towards Seminary Ridge. His line was bolstered by numerous artillery pieces from Captain James Thompson's battery and Lieutenant John Buckland's battery. Graham threw out a heavy skirmish line on his left flank made up of the 3rd Michigan and the 3rd Maine. Confederate artillery began to batter the Union line as Barksdale and Kershaw began to deploy their men. Kershaw's men stepped off first and became bombarded by heavy artillery fire. The 2nd South Carolina's Colonel John Kennedy wrote, "We were in 10 minutes or less terribly butchered. I saw half a dozen at a time knocked up and flung to the ground like trifles." Despite the debilitating hail of iron and lead, the South Carolinians pressed on through the skirmishers and onto Graham's left flank. The 8th South Carolina and the 3rd South Carolina Battalion surged forward to meet the 2nd New Hampshire and the 141st Pennsylvania. The 2nd New Hampshire's commander requested and obtained permission to charge. The men from that granite state did just that, catching the Southerners off guard and pushed them back. New Hampshire kept their advanced position, which opened up a gap in the line. About that time, Barksdale's men came into range and view of the right flank of Graham's line. The 114th, 57th, and 105th Pennsylvania, seeing the Confederates, crossed the Emmitsburg Road to meet their adversary, only widening the gap between the left and right flank. The 68th Pennsylvania moved to fill that gap. The 68th did not stay in their position long. Barksdale's heavy fire drove them from their position. The 141st, seeing that the New Hampshire troops could be overtaken by the South Carolinians, rallied the skirmishers of the 3rd Michigan and 3rd Maine to advance on the enemy. As the 141st advanced, the Michigan and Maine men broke ranks as they entered the fray, leaving only 2 regiments guarding the flank. The 73rd New York of Colonel William Brewster's brigade noticed the exposed flank of the 141st Pennsylvania. They rushed across the field to help Graham's deteriorating left flank. Unfortunately for them, Kershaw's 2 brigades broke through the 2nd New Hampshire and 141st Pennsylvania. Barksdale's men had by that time surmounted the left flank of the 114th Pennsylvania and pushed them back. This made the line along the Emmitsburg Road untenable for the Union, and the rest of the line began to fall back. Commanders all the way down to captains of companies formed small pockets of resistance that would gather up, fire at the enemy, and fall back. The gray waves persisted and Graham's brigade was in disarray. Kershaw's men, after pushing back Graham's left flank, rejoined the rest of the brigade further to the south. However, Barksdale's men were not alone in their fight. Coming up on the Mississippians' left flank was Wilcox's Alabamians and Lang's Floridians. Brewster was able to pull his troops back to face the successful brigade of Barksdale. Brewster's defense began to disintegrate as they began exchanging volleys with the enemy. The angle that Brewster and Brigadier General Joseph Carr's lines made allowed for the oncoming Confederates to place extreme pressure on the already stressed line, and it gave way. General Hancock, commander of the 2nd Corps, knowing the desperate situation that was befalling the Union line, quickly set about rounding up what units he could to plug the hole left by Carr and Brewster. One of the regiments he found, the 19th Maine, remembered that Carr's troops swept over us, they stepped on or between the men, and even tumbled over us, having no regard to dignity or military order, or to pick out reasonable paths to walk in, as their only object seemed to be to get to the rear out of reach of their relentless pursuers. Hancock also found Colonel George Willard's 3rd Brigade of Brigadier General Alexander Hayes's 3rd Division in reserve north of the copse of trees. The New Yorkers had been captured at Harper's Ferry the year before and been paroled. They had gained a bad reputation and sought desperately to redeem themselves on the battlefield. Barksdale, Wilcox, and Lang's brigades were victorious against the other brigades, but were badly bloodied and now horribly under strength. After routing Brewster and Carr, they reorganized their men and raided them for the next attack. The 21st Mississippi captured numerous batteries on Barksdale's right. Seeing this, Hancock ordered the 39th New York to drive the Mississippians back. Hancock then ordered the 111th New York to take up a position on the 1st Minnesota's left, plugging the hole there. The three Confederate brigades launched their attack. Wilcox's men began taking fire from the 1st Minnesota and the 111th New York. He sent numerous messages to his commander, Major General Richard Anderson, for support and reinforcements, but none came. His men could stand no more, and were the 1st Brigade to give way. Lang's Floridians now had enemy troops firing into their right flank, and the threat of the enemy getting behind them, and after seeing Wilcox retreat, began their withdrawal. Barksdale's stubborn Mississippi Brigade encountered the New Yorkers in the underbrush around Plum Run. The Union troops at first thought the Southerners were Federal troops. This gave Barksdale enough time to reload and attack. The blue-clad troops withstood a heavy fire but fixed bayonets and advanced into the Confederates. Along with artillery support, Barksdale was in a hopeless situation with no support. Around this time, he was severely wounded and fell from his horse. With their fearless leader down, his men began to surrender or fall back to the rear. The 21st Mississippi, seeing the 39th New York approach, attempted to turn the battery they had just captured against the advancing enemy, but the artillery crew, before abandoning the gun, had taken the implements and the friction primers away from them. The Mississippians could see more enemy troops converging on their position, and withdrew as well. Barksdale would be taken into a Union hospital and die the next day. The ground that Barksdale's men covered was tremendous. His charge is not as popular as Pickett's charge, but is no less impressive. This moment highlights not only the determination and tenacity of the Mississippians, but also the genius and energy expelled by Winfield Scott Hancock when he maneuvered numerous forces to halt the Confederate attack. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please share it and get the word out about these awesome stories that I try to bring to you each week. I have a Patreon page if you'd like to support the channel that way. I also have a shop on teespring.com with t-shirts representing the channel that you can buy. The link to both of those websites and the channel's Twitter and Facebook page are in the description below. Have a great week.